Ben had never planned to crash on a strange alien world. His mission was simple: map the outer ring of uncharted planets and return to his base with new data. He flew a small Explorer-class ship with only basic supplies and equipment. He enjoyed traveling alone. He liked silence, stars, and learning about the unknown. But on the fourth day of his mission, everything went wrong. His ship was flying near a belt of dark rocks when a piece of hidden debris slammed into the side. Alarms screamed and lights blinked red across the dashboard. Ben fought to control the spin, but the damage was too great. The ship began falling toward a nearby green planet, pulled by gravity and fire. Come on, he said, teeth clenched, fingers tight on the controls. He managed to slow the fall just enough to avoid death. The ship hit the trees and slid through thick branches before crashing into soft jungle ground. Smoke rose from the broken metal. Sparks flew. Ben opened the hatch and crawled out, coughing and holding his side. His ribs hurt. His arm was scraped. And his clothes were torn, but he was alive. Okay, he whispered. You're alive. That's step one. He looked around. The place was wild and green. Tall trees with glowing leaves stretched high into the sky. Vines hung low. Small creatures chirped and ran. Strange plants moved slightly as if breathing. The air was thick, but not toxic. His scanner said the planet was safe for human life. His ship's signal was dead. The comms were broken, and the distress beacon was cracked. He had no way to call for help. So he grabbed his backpack, filled it with tools, a knife, some water, and the small translator device. Started walking. Maybe there were natives. Maybe there was a clear spot to send a signal. He didn't get far. As he moved through the jungle, the ground sloped upward, climbed a mossy hill and found a small grove with fruit trees. His stomach growled. He reached up to grab a low-hanging purple fruit. Don't move. A voice growled behind him. Ben froze. A shadow leapt from the trees. He turned just in time to see a tall figure flying through the air. She landed on him with force, knocking him flat on the ground. His breath left his lungs. On top of him sat a creature woman, but not human. She was strong, tall, and wild-looking. Her skin was a mix of silver and dark blue, marked with patterns that shimmered like paint. Her long black hair flowed down her back, and her yellow eyes glared into his. Her hands pinned his shoulders. Sharp claws pressed near his neck. This is my territory, she hissed. Ben didn't speak. He didn't move. He just stared at her, heart pounding. She was angry, fierce, and clearly ready to fight. I didn't know, he said slowly. I'm not here to take anything. I crashed. I'm lost. She didn't understand. Her expression didn't change. Her ears twitched, and her tail flicked behind her. Thief, she said, pressing harder. You take from my trees? No, he said quickly. I didn't know they were yours. I was just trying to survive. She reached to his backpack and pulled out the translator device. Curious, she turned it in her hands, sniffing it. Ben gently pointed to the button and nodded. She hesitated but pressed it. Speak, she ordered. Ben cleared his throat. My name is Ben. I'm human. My ship crashed here. I didn't mean to enter your territory. I'm just trying to survive. The device translated his words. Her eyes narrowed. She stared at him for a long time, then slowly climbed off him. He sat up, rubbing his chest. You are not one of them, she said. Double quotes them. He asked. She didn't answer. Instead, she grabbed a thin rope from her belt and quickly tied his hands before he could stop her. Hey, what are you? I don't trust you, she said simply. You come with me. Ben didn't argue. He was outmatched. She pulled him along through the jungle, moving fast and silent like a hunter, stumbled over roots trying to keep up. After a while, they reached a cave hidden behind thick vines. She pushed him inside and sat him near a small fire. It was warm and smelled of herbs. You stay, she said. No run. Not planning to, Ben said, breathing hard. She sat across from him, watching. Her eyes never left him. Ben looked. Around the cave was simple but safe. Saw weapons made of bone and metal, hanging herbs, dried meat. This was her home. Do you live alone? He asked. Yes. Why? Don't ask, she snapped. He stayed quiet. For hours, she said nothing more. She just watched him, sometimes sniffing the air like an animal, sometimes checking the translator, to see if it worked right. Ben sat still and tried not to make sudden moves. When night fell, she tossed him a small fruit. Eat. She said, "Thank you," he replied, surprised. She didn't respond. She just looked into the fire. Ben didn't sleep much that night. The cave floor was cold, and the rope around his wrists rubbed his skin, shifted slowly, trying not to draw attention. The alien woman sat across the fire, her golden eyes open, glowing faintly in the dark. She hadn't tied him too tight, but she had made it clear if he moved the wrong way. She wouldn't hesitate to act. In the morning, she handed him a piece of dried meat. He looked at it, then at her. "Can I eat this?" he asked. "Eat or starve," she replied without emotion. He chewed slowly. It was tough and had a strange taste, but it filled his stomach. He finished it, then looked at her again. "You didn't. Tell me your name." She didn't answer. "Dead?" She picked up a long spear leaning against the wall. "We go now," she said. "Where?" Ben asked, confused. "To prove you speak truth?" Before he could ask more, she cut the rope. Ben stood and stretched his sore arms. She kept the spear close and gave him a sharp look as they left the cave. They walked deep into the forest. Tall trees bent over them like a roof. Strange birds flew above, and odd bugs crawled along the bark. Ben followed her quietly, watching how she moved. She was graceful, quick, and alert. Every sound, every leaf, she noticed after some time, they reached the wreckage of Ben's ship. It was still smoking slightly, broken in half, and half buried under branches. Lyra, as she finally allowed him to call her, stared at the metal. With wide eyes. "What is this?" she asked, her voice low. "My ship," Ben said. "This is how I came here. It's not a weapon." She stepped closer, poking the metal with the tip of her spear. Ben walked toward the broken hatch and pulled out a tool from the bag near the entrance. He showed it to her. "See? Not a weapon, just tools." Lyra studied it, then looked around. "You came alone?" "Yes," Ben said. "This was a solo mission. Just me." She thought for a moment. "No one follows?" "No," Ben said. "Don't know. I crashed. The beacon is broken." She stared at him again for a long time. "If you lie, I will know," she warned. "I'm not lying." They searched the area for anything useful. Ben gathered his small scanner, a water filter, and his medical kit. Lyra watched closely. When they were ready, they began walking back to the cave. On the way, Ben spoke again. "Thank you for not hurting me." Lyra didn't reply right away. Finally, she said, "You did not scream or beg. That is rare." Ben smiled. "I didn't want to make it worse." She gave him a strange look, like she was trying to understand him. Back at the cave, Ben helped repair a crack in the wall using metal pieces from his ship. Lyra watched him work. He wasn't strong like her, but he was clever. She started to see he was not helpless, even if he looked soft. As the days passed, they began to talk more. "Why do you live alone?" Ben asked one night. Lyra didn't answer right away. She stared into the fire. "My tribe was taken," she said softly. "Years ago, I escaped. Others did not." Ben didn't ask more. He understood that kind of pain. The next morning, Lyra brought back meat from a hunt. Ben helped clean it using one of his tools. She was surprised at how well he did it. "Where did you learn?" she asked. "I trained for survival missions," he said. "Just learned a little bit of everything." Lyra nodded. "You are useful." Ben chuckled. "I'll take that as a compliment." As they ate, Ben pointed to her spear. "Did you make that?" "Yes," she said. "From the bones of a beast I killed." "You're strong." She looked proud for a second, then turned away. Later that day, Ben tried to fix the broken device from his bag. Lyra sat nearby, sharpening her blade. "Can you send a message?" she asked. "I'm trying," he said, "but it's badly damaged." She watched him closely. "If it works, will others come?" "Maybe," Ben said honestly, "but I'm not sure. We're far from any main route." She said nothing. That night, They sat in silence for a while. Then Lyra said something unexpected. "You are not like others." Ben looked up. Others. The ones who come with ships and weapons. They do not speak. They only take. Ben frowned. "I'm not one of them. I came to explore, not to harm." She nodded slowly. After that, something changed between them. They shared stories. Ben told her about Earth, about blue oceans, tall cities, and music. She told him about her world before the raid, how where people sang to the trees and raced across the cliffs. They laughed a little. Not much, but it was real. Ben started helping with more things, gathering wood, fixing tools, even cooking over the fire. "You are not weak," Lyra said one evening. "Thank you," Ben smiled.
"Oh,
"I'm glad you think so." She stood and handed him a small blade. "Learn to use this." He took it carefully. "You're going to train me?" "Yes," she said. "If you stay, you must learn. This world is not kind." Ben nodded. He understood. He wasn't just surviving now. He was changing, learning, becoming stronger, and without knowing when it happened, he had earned her trust. Days turned into a slow rhythm. Ben fixed small things. Lyra hunted, scouted, and taught. The cave changed as they worked together. Ben added a drip line that caught clean water from a crack in the ceiling and ran it into a carved stone basin. Lyra said it was clever. He said it was simple camping skill. She kept the basin anyway. Language got easier. Ben's small translator could store words. When Lyra said something new, he would repeat it, record it, and the device would try to match sounds. Sometimes it was wrong and gave funny results. Once Lyra said a word that meant "move quiet," and the device said "soft tree walk." Ben laughed so hard he almost dropped a pot. Lyra tried not to laugh, but her shoulders shook. Training started each morning. First, balance drills on fallen logs. Lyra told him to place his feet like roots, not like steps. Then blade practice. She showed him how to hold the short knife. Low, how to turn the wrist, how to use the other hand to block. Ben was slow at first. He kept looking at the blade instead of her eyes. She tapped his forehead with a stick. "Watch the person, not the tool," she said. He improved. One afternoon, the sky changed color. Clouds rolled in, heavy and green. Lyra stopped mid-step and looked up. "Storm," she said. Ben had seen storms on many worlds, but this one was different. The air shook before the rain even fell. Lyra moved fast. We sealed the cave. Together they dragged heavy bark sheets across the entrance, leaving gaps for air. Ben sealed the edges with mud and plant fiber. Lightning flashed blue-white through the cracks. Thunder followed so close it sounded like stone breaking beside them. Lyra sat near the wall, tense, jaw tight. Ben noticed her hands shake. He sat beside her without speaking. After a long silence, she said, "Raiders came in a storm like this. Sound hid their landing craft. When thunder hit, they struck." Ben listened. "I am here now," he said. "If anyone comes, we fight together." She looked at him, surprised by how sure his voice sounded. Slow, she nodded. Rain crashed for hours. Water flowed down the cave wall and filled the new basin Ben had built. When the storm ended, the forest smelled clean and bright. Many fallen branches lay across the ground. Ben smiled at the wood supply. Lyra smiled at the full basin. "Your drip line good idea," she said. He answered, "Your cave saved my life." They both were right. After the storm, food grew easier to find. New shoots appeared. Small animals came out to eat them. Lyra showed Ben how to set ground loops that caught quick-footed lizards. Ben showed Lyra how to smoke meat slowly using damp wood so it kept longer. She had never stored food that way. After 3 days, the smoked strips tasted strong but safe. Lyra decided they would always keep a store now. "No hunger in long storms," she said. Ben felt proud. They explored farther. Ben wanted high ground to test a weak signal burst from the half-repaired unit. Lyra warned that high ridges were hunting paths for sky gliders, wide-winged beasts that could swoop and grab weight equal to Ben. He swallowed but still wanted to try. They climbed anyway, moving under tree cover. Twice, Lyra threw scent dust that confused flying predators. Ben marked the powder formula in his field notes when they reached a ridge clearing. Ben set up a small tripod antenna built from ship parts, vine lashings, and a metal spar. IDA. He powered the unit, aimed it at the sky, and sent a repeating ping. Burst on emergency bands. The readout flickered. Signal strength was very low. Maybe someone far away would catch a trace. Maybe not. But he tried. As he packed up, Lyra crouched and touched the scorched ground. "Machines," she whispered. Ben knelt beside her. The soil showed round marks, almost melted like landing pad burns. They were not from his ship. They were older, but not too old. Maybe weeks. Lyra smelled the dirt and frowned. "These are the ones who take," she said. Ben felt a chill. "The raiders. Poachers." She nodded once. "They capture rare beings, sell them, trade them, not only from my world, from many." Ben looked across the forest. "If they are still here, we must be careful." "We watch," she said. The next few days turned from training to scouting. Lyra led. Ben followed with a small recorder. They found more signs. Cut branches in clean lines, metal wire snagged in a bush, prints from boots that were not shaped like her people's feet. Ben collected a fragment of alloy. It matched no natural or sample. Stored it. That night, they sat by the fire. Ben spread small stones to mark places on a rough map. The cave, the crash site, the ridge marks, the wire snare. Lyra studied the layout. "Their camp must be near water," she said. "Raiders always need wash, fuel, cooling." Ben tapped the stone basin in the cave. "Like we needed water in the storm." She nodded. "There is a wide river valley east, to open for me alone. With you, maybe we look." "Yes," Ben said. "We go at dawn." Before sleeping, Lyra did something new. She took charcoal from the fire and drew a line on the cave wall above Ben's sleeping place. Next to it, she drew the simple mark she had used earlier to warn strangers away from her fruit trees. Then she added a second mark, shaped like two leaves crossing. Ben pointed. "What does it mean, guest of Lyra?" she said. "Is safe under my watch. Anyone who knows my mark will see this and leave you alone." Ben felt something warm in his chest. "Thank you," he said quietly. She gave a small smile. "Do not make me regret it." The next morning they packed light, dried meat, water, rope, small tools, the translator, and Ben's short blade. Lyra carried her spear and climbing claws. Mist lay low over the forest, and sun shafts cut through leaves as they moved toward the river valley. Ben looked back once at the cave. Days ago, he was a tied prisoner. Now he walked beside a hunter who called him guest. The forest still held danger, but he no longer felt alone. He also no longer felt like just a lost explorer. He was part of something now small, fragile, still. Forming but real ahead, somewhere in the green silence, the ones who took were leaving signs. Ben and Lyra were going to find them. The forest grew quieter as Ben and Lyra moved closer to the river valley. Birds that once chirped loudly now fell silent. Cute? Even the wind sounded softer here, like it was afraid to speak. Lyra stopped often, checking the ground, sniffing the air, or listening. Ben followed behind, careful not to step on dry branches or snap twigs. They climbed a rocky ledge and looked out. Below them was the river valley wide and calm, with tall grass and patches of thick trees. Near the far side of the valley, metal shined faintly between the trunks. Ben raised his scanner. The signal was weak but clear machinery. "Artificial heat signatures? People." "They're there," Ben whispered. Lyra nodded slowly. "Raiders." They waited until the sun dipped low. Shadows grew longer, and the light softened to a golden orange.
Ice.
Lyra pointed to a large tree that curved toward the valley. "We watch from there." Close, but hidden. They crawled on their bellies under bushes and through vines until they reached the edge. Lyra climbed the tree quickly, like she'd done it 100 times. Ben followed, slower and clumsier, using knots in the bark for grip. From the high branch they looked down at the camp. The raider camp was built between broken trees. Small. Black tents stood in rows. Glowing lights blinked on metal towers. Strange cages stood on the far side, most of them empty, but one held something inside. Ben zoomed in with his scope. Inside the cage was a creature. Not human, not like Lyra either. It looked small, with blue skin and wide eyes. It sat curled, not moving. "They're capturing people," Ben said softly. "Yes," Lyra said. Voice was cold. "They sell them, for trade, for other bad things." Ben's stomach turned. "We can't let them stay." Lyra looked at him. "You will fight?" He met her eyes. "Yes, we fight together." They stayed hidden, watching the camp until night came. They counted the guards 5, moving outside the tents. 2 more near the cage. Ben memorized the patrol pattern. Lyra marked it with a sharp rock on a flat piece of bark. "We need distraction," she said. "I can cause that," Ben replied. "I'll sneak near their generator. If I overload it, the lights will go out. They'll panic. They run. We strike," Lyra said, nodding. They waited until full dark. The stars above the valley blinked gently, and the moonlight barely touched the trees. Ben checked his tools: small wire, a heat spark coil, and a broken ship battery, with just enough power for a short burst. He tied it together into a simple overload device. "You're sure you want to go alone?" Lyra asked. "I move faster alone," Ben said. "I won't fight them, just cause trouble. You get ready with your people." Lyra paused. "I have no people." Ben smiled. "You have me." She said nothing, but her eyes softened just a little. Ben slipped down from the tree and vanished into the grass. Lyra moved around the valley edge like a shadow. The camp buzzed quietly. 2 guards sat near the generator, talking. Ben crawled low and used a small rock to distract them. When they turned their heads, he rolled forward and placed the device. Behind a crate, tapped the spark coil, and it started to hum. He backed away slowly. Then he ran. Suddenly the device flashed. Sparks flew. The generator popped and smoked. The lights died. Alarms rang. Voices shouted. The camp filled with confusion. Lyra struck fast. From the trees she leaped, knocking down one of the guards with her spear. Another turned with a blaster, but she rolled and slashed his leg. Ben watched from a bush and then ran toward the cages. He cut the lock using his heated blade tool. The blue-skinned creature inside stared at him with wide, fearful eyes. "I'm not here to hurt you," Ben said gently. "Come, we're getting out." The creature nodded and crawled out. Ben grabbed its hand and pulled it behind him. More raiders appeared. One saw Ben and raised his weapon. Just before he fired, Lyra jumped between them, taking the shot on her armor plate. She grunted but stayed standing. She slashed with her spear, and the raider fell. "Go," she shouted. Ben ran with the rescued creature. They reached the trees, and Lyra followed behind. 3 more raiders gave chase, but Lyra led them into a trap pit covered with leaves. 2 fell in, screaming. The 3rd turned and ran back. They didn't stop running until they were far into the forest, beyond the valley. Only then did they rest near a fallen log. Ben was out of breath. A small blue alien clung to his side, shaking. "We did it," Ben said. Lyra checked her side. The shot had burned her armor, but not her skin. She touched it and winced. Ben looked at her. "You saved me." "Saved him," she said, pointing at the creature. "What now?" Ben asked. "Now," Lyra said, "we teach others how to fight back." They looked at the blue alien, who finally spoke. "My name's Noah," he said softly. "Thank you." Ben smiled. "You're safe now." They didn't know how many more raiders were out there, but they knew one thing together. They were stronger. This forest wasn't just Lyra's territory anymore. Noah sat close to the fire, arms wrapped around his knees. His eyes were wide, his voice small. Ben handed him a warm drink made from boiled forest herbs. Noah took it with both hands, looking unsure. "You're safe now," Ben said softly. Lyra stood nearby, keeping watch. She didn't speak much, but her eyes stayed sharp, scanning the darkness beyond the trees. "Where are you from?" Ben asked Noah. From the sky, Noah whispered. My people live in high towers. We grow light fruit. They came one night. The raiders, they took many. I escaped into a cave, but they found me again later, I thought. It was the end. Ben nodded slowly. They won't take you again. Lyra walked over, crouching beside them. We need to move tomorrow, she said. They will come back. More of them. Ben looked at her. Where can we go? High ground, near the cliffs. Hard to reach, easy to defend. Then we move, Ben said. But we need supplies, tools, food. We gather at sunrise, Lyra replied. The next morning, the forest felt different. Every leaf seemed to hold a secret. Every sound made them stop and listen. Ben carried a small pack while Lyra hunted ahead. Noah stayed close to Ben, quiet but alert. They reached a stream. Lyra knelt to fill her flask. As Ben looked down at the water, he saw movement behind them, shadows between trees. Get down, he shouted, pulling Noah behind a rock. 3 raiders stepped out, blasters raised. They'd found them. Lyra rolled to the side and threw a knife. It hit one raider in the leg. The others fired, missing as she disappeared into the brush. Ben grabbed a stick and stood in front of Noah. He had no weapon, but he wouldn't run. One raider aimed at him, but before he could shoot, a snare hidden in the trees snapped upward. The raider flew into the air, hanging by his ankle. Lyra stepped out from the shadows, spear in hand, and she moved fast, taking down the second raider with a strong strike to the chest. The third one turned and fled. Lyra walked over to Ben and looked him over. You're not hurt? No, Ben said. But that was close. They follow scent. Lyra said, we need to leave. They moved quickly, climbing up toward the cliffs. The path was steep and rough. Ben slipped more than once, but Lyra always pulled him up. Noah followed quietly, stronger than he looked. At the top, they reached a narrow ridge that led to a wide ledge covered in soft moss and old trees. This will be our camp, Lyra said. Hard to climb, easy to guard. Ben looked around. It was high and hidden. From here they could see the whole forest below. It's perfect, he said. They worked all day to build shelter. Ben used old ship parts and vines. Lyra taught him how to weave tree branches into strong walls. Noah collected glowing berries and herbs. By nightfall they had a small camp, not big, but safe. They sat around the fire again. Noah finally spoke. Want to help? Ben looked at him. You already are. I want to fight, Noah said. I want to stop them from hurting others. Lyra studied the small alien. You are brave, she said, but you must be ready. This is not a small fight, Ben agreed. It's not just about surviving anymore. It's about protecting others. Lyra nodded. Then we train. All of us. The next morning, training began. Lyra showed Ben and Noah how to move silently, how to hide in the trees, how to make small traps using the land. Ben taught Noah how to use tools and build alarms with metal and sensors. You're getting faster. Lyra said to Ben one afternoon. You're just slow now, Ben joked. She smirked and tossed him a practice spear. Show me. They sparred under the trees, wooden sticks clashing. Ben blocked 2 strikes, but missed the third. Lyra knocked him flat with a sweep of her leg. Ow, Ben groaned. You almost lasted a minute, she teased. Getting better, he said. Grinning, Noah laughed from the side. You both look silly. Days passed, and they trained harder. They built more traps. They placed sensors near the lower paths. Whenever movement was near, a soft light flashed in camp. One night, Ben sat beside Lyra, watching the stars. You think we can win? He asked. I don't know, she said. But I won't run again. Me neither, Ben said. There was a long silence. You're different than when you first came, she said. You too, Ben replied. They smiled. At each other, not speaking more. Suddenly, the alarm blinked. Movement near the forest floor. Lyra stood at once, grabbing her spear. Ben grabbed his knife and scanner. Noah climbed a tree to scout. They're coming, Noah whispered. More this time. Ben looked at Lyra. Then we hold the line. She nodded. This is our ground now. The fire behind them burned steady. The traps were set, their weapons ready. They weren't just survivors anymore. They were defenders, and no one would take their home again. Dark clouds gathered above the cliffs as Ben tightened the vines on the last trap. The forest below felt heavy, like it was holding its breath. Lyra stood near the ridge's edge, her sharp eyes watching the tree line far below. Noah climbed down, from a tall tree landing softly. They're coming, Noah said. I saw 6 raiders, maybe more behind them. Ben nodded. This is it. He checked the alarms one last time. Small lights hidden in the trees would blink if movement was close. The traps were ready pits, falling rocks, and a set of sharp logs rigged to swing down when triggered. Lyra walked over and placed a hand on Ben's shoulder. Thank you, she said quietly. He looked at her surprised. For what? For staying, she said. For fighting. Ben smiled. This is our territory now. They took positions. Ben stayed near the west side, where 2 narrow paths curved up the cliff. Lyra stood in the center, guarding the main rise. Noah set himself near the left ridge, hidden behind stones with a signal whistle ready in his hand. For a long time, it was only silence. Then the forest moved. Branches snapped. Leaves rustled. The blinking light lit up once, twice, then 3 times in a row. Lyra raised her spear ready. Ben crouched low, holding his knife tight. His heart pounded, but he didn't feel fear and focus. The first raider stepped into view, followed by 2 more. Their eyes glowed behind their helmets. One raised a scanner. They were cautious, looking around. A loud snap echoed. One stepped on a weak vine, and the log trap fell smashing down with force. The lead raider flew back, stunned. Another stepped into a snare and was yanked upward, hanging by one leg. Ben moved quickly, throwing a small flash device he'd made from ship parts. It exploded in light, and the third raider stumbled, blind. Lyra leapt from behind a tree and brought her spear down fast. The 4th and 5th raiders came up the side paths. Ben threw a stone to distract them and triggered a rock slide. Heavy stones tumbled down, knocking one off balance, but they kept coming. Noah blew the whistle. 2 more raiders had circled around and climbed the far edge. Ben ran to the left side, sliding into cover, threw one of the last traps a rope net to the path. It caught one of the raiders, tangling him. The second one raised a blaster and fired. The shot hit the stone beside Ben. Shards flew. Ben ducked, heart racing. Lyra charged from the other side, roaring. She slammed into the raider, knocking him down. They struggled for a moment before Lyra struck with the handle of her spear. Ending it, everything went quiet again. 7 raiders were down. Is that all of them? Noah called from above. Lyra looked at the forest, her ears twitched. She whispered, 1 more. They heard footsteps, slow, heavy ones. A tall figure stepped into view, bigger than the others. More armor, more weapons. This one looked like a leader. He raised a large weapon and fired toward Ben. Ben rolled to the ground, but the edge of the blast caught his side. He shouted and dropped his knife. Pain burned through him. Ben. Lyra cried out. She ran at the leader without hesitation. Their weapons clashed, spear against blade. The leader was strong, but Lyra was faster. She moved like a shadow, striking and dodging. Ben, still on the ground, reached for a small device on his belt. It was the emergency spark, coiled the same. One he had used to overload the generator. He pressed the button. A bright flash burst behind the leader's back. It wasn't strong enough to harm him, but it blinded him for a second. That was all Lyra needed. She struck fast, knocking his weapon aside, and kicked him to the ground. Then she stood over him, breathing hard. Leave, she growled. This is our place now? The leader looked at her, then at Ben, then at Noah above. Slowly he stood, raised his hands, and backed away. One by one, the remaining raiders followed him. They melted into the forest, vanishing into the trees. Lyra turned to Ben. You're hurt? Just a burn, he said through clenched teeth. Noah, came running down, carrying a pouch of herbs and bandages. "I'll help," he said quickly. Together they cleaned the wound. Ben smiled through the pain. "We did it." "Yes," Lyra said, her voice soft. "We protected it." They rested that night under a clear sky. The fire crackled gently. Ben leaned against a tree, his side bandaged. Lyra sat beside him, watching the stars. "Do you still think I'm a lost explorer?" he asked. Lyra looked at him. "No, now I think you belong here. And you?" Ben asked. She thought for a moment. "I don't feel alone anymore." Noah smiled from the other side of the fire. "None of us are alone now." Ben looked around at their little camp on the cliff, at the trees below, and at the sky above. This place had become something more than just a survival ground. It was home, and no matter what came next, they would face it together.